So I'm here to talk about security awareness fundamentals. This is more from a perspective of teaching end users who are not technical. I'll get into my background in a little bit, but so I'm not trying to educate you as security professionals on awareness. I'm trying to give you ideas for if you're ever talking to a user, what can you talk to them about? If you're involved in your awareness activities at your company, if you don't have a dedicated awareness professional, these are some things that you might bring up to them. So don't be expecting to come away having learned new things in the realm of security, but more in the realm of talking to people, okay? So I'm Galen Fassler. I work at Duke Health. This is a little bit about my history. I really like this slide for a few reasons. I think it looks great and I'm very proud of it. Thank you. And it shows that I have a little bit of an unconventional IT security background. So I've worked in security for about 5.5 years, but I started, my bachelor's is in history. And history does not relate to security. It turns out in 2013, it didn't actually relate to the professional economy at all. So I went back for my master's, and I have a master's in criminology, which is kind of where I come into security. I did an emphasis in cybercrime and terrorism, and I took a lot of information assurance classes, cyber criminology, that kind of thing. Realized that I could learn this stuff and be very successful in this field. I got a couple of certifications after that because even with the master's, it's sometimes really hard to get a cybersecurity job. And once I got those, I started my career in cyber. I worked at Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Carolina, RTI International, and I've been at Duke Health for a little over 4 years now. I work for her. She's going to harass me later. Don't worry, I asked her to. I am the awareness and training lead at Duke Health, which is what I have been doing for the last 4 years. When I meet new people, I like to describe my job as desperately asking people to stop clicking on links. Usually gets a chuckle, and it kind of lets people know what I do. I spend a lot of time talking to people, right? It's most of my job. I create content, I do presentations, I'm doing this kind of thing all the time. And I also am very involved in our diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging efforts at Duke Health. And in that vein, I would like to wish you all a very happy Pride Month. So, to start, what is security awareness? At the base, you're training your users to be aware of common practices, tactics, and tools used by bad actors. So we're going to talk about what all of that is later, but this would be phishing, this would be social engineering, right? You're trying to let people know that bad people exist on the internet, right? So it might be hard to imagine, but some people don't believe that. The purpose, what I do at is mitigating and minimizing the risk of people taking actions that can't be limited by technical controls, right? So a lot of times when we talk about security awareness, people think, well, why do we need you to talk to people? We have the tools. We have email filtering. We have Zscaler. We have CrowdStrike. We have these tools. And we're going to talk about it. It's because people are really smart, right? We're catching up to what other people are doing. And in that vein, helping people understand that bad things can happen can maybe help minimize those risks. It's all about risk at the end of the day, right? Which is what cybersecurity focuses on heavily, in my opinion. What security awareness isn't. I included this because there are a lot of people that think they can just go talk to a user and make them completely understand what they're talking about, right? There's a lot of people that go, well, why doesn't this person understand X, Y, Z? And it's because they don't want to. They either don't want to, they don't know, they're not interested in this stuff like we are, right? I want to learn everything I possibly can about this. But if working at Duke Health, I'm talking to a doctor, they're not going to want to learn everything about this, right? So why don't they know? Because they don't, because they haven't learned it, they haven't experienced this before. So what we're not trying to do is shame and blame people, right? I'm not going to go to somebody and say, well, why did you do that? That's ridiculous. Why don't you know better? I don't know how to be a doctor if they don't know how to be a security professional, right? So I'm going to talk to them in the vein of, yes, something went wrong. How can I help you? And how can we make sure it doesn't go wrong in the future? So it's not blaming user or calling them the weakest link. We use that terminology a lot in security. They're the weakest links. They're the one who click on the links. They're making the mistakes. All true, but do you imagine that makes people feel very good about themselves when you go to them and say, why are you the weakest link in our security chain, right? Probably doesn't make them feel very good if I had to guess. We're not trying to trick people. We're going to have a discussion about phishing, And I hope that you brought your voices because I am interested to hear your opinions. But we're not trying to trick people. When we do simulated phishing, I'm not trying to be like, haha, gotcha. Although sometimes I do think that, and it is really fun for me when people click on my links, but that's not the goal, right? We're training them. We're trying to introduce them to these concepts of where things go wrong and help them spot and report them, right? And we're not trying to get them to know everything that we know. I have this a couple times in this slideshow because I think it's really important. Again, if you go talk to a regular user, a nurse, a doctor, again, in our case at Duke Health, they're not going to care what SSL versus TLS is, right? They're not going to care about router security. They're not going to care about that stuff. They care about getting their job done, which in their case could be literally saving lives. So I'm not going to tell them everything that I've learned. I'm not going to tell them about this crazy attack that happened that we think China was behind it and it got the government, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's really interesting, but in their perspective, they might be really overwhelmed by that, right? And if I overwhelm them out of the get-go, then they're going to shut down and they're not going to take in anything that I'm actually trying to teach them. Why do we need it? Again, why? Why do I need to go talk to people when we have the technical tools? Again, the bad guys are really smart. So if you look at some of these statistics, they are a little bit older. Some of these are 2022 data from our 2023 reports. 2022, we saw this huge uptick in toad attacks. What's a toad attack? Telephone-oriented attack delivery method. I didn't name it, don't blame me. Toad attacks. Starts with an email, says, hey, can you call me? Gets people on the phone. Do we have a technical control to stop that? The email doesn't come in with a link, doesn't come in with any kind of threatening language. It just says, hey, I need XYZ, can you give me a call? Is it an impersonation attack? Not necessarily. It's just, hey, I have this product that I need to talk to you about. Hey, I have something, XYZ, give me a call. Get them on the phone, what happens next? If I'm not there to tell people that bad things can happen over the phone, then how do they know that they're maybe being scammed, right? So a huge uptick in that, continue to see an uptick in that this year. If you look, 84% of organizations in 2022 faced at least one successful phishing attack. Our technical tools are great, but they don't catch everything, right? We have a tool that rewrites URLs as it comes into our environment. But sometimes it takes maybe a day for it to go back and rewrite it again and say, oh no, this is malicious, this is bad. And it's not going to do anything right away, right? We have CrowdStrike. It's going to stop PowerShell scripts. But is it going to stop someone from visiting a website and entering information? Maybe not, right? We have all of these tools, but it doesn't mean that it's going to completely stop everything a user wants to do. Bad guys are smart, but our people are smart too. And if they think they want to do something, they're going to get around our technical controls, no matter how much we have them, right? And then cyber attacks involve social engineering, 98%. That's actually a statistic from 2023 data. So that's more recent. Social engineering is tricky, right? They're getting smart. And with this new generative AI, what does that mean for our end users? When we don't have technical tools to block phone calls on their personal devices, but could get them access to work things, right? Technical controls fail. They fail. They're there and they're worthwhile and they work until they don't, because we're defending what we know and attackers are trying to get around that, right?
Can you speak about defense in depth, particularly the user part of that stack?
Sure. So defense in depth, very important. I'm one layer of it, right? Security awareness is probably the last thing that you want to focus on because you have all those technical controls in the first place. So for example, we at Duke have technical controls on our email filtering. So in a span of about 30 days to Duke, we get 130 million emails that come into a Duke email address. And off the bat, 60% of them are just blocked because we know that they're sent from a malicious IP, right? And then we go through looking at, we examine the email. We have tools that'll detonate those links or open those attachments, see what's happening. And that we have all of these things that block it down to where we only get about 40%, less than 40% of those emails actually delivered to inboxes. So we're not just talking about end users, right? Like that's where I focus, but that's not the only thing we have. We're not asking our end users to know exactly everything and to be the only line of defense, because we have all these tools before we get there. And then if by chance an email with a link does get through, we have CrowdStrike So if you click it and it's starting to talk to something via PowerShell commands, it's gonna stop that. We have Zscaler, which is going to examine traffic. So even if it is encrypted, it's going to look at what that traffic actually is so that it can block that traffic if it's known malicious, right? We're just one piece of this very complicated security puzzle.
Right.
Is that what you meant?
Yeah, just to say, users are a part of the defense in depth stack. They're just
Yes.
one more control.
Yes, we're one more control. Yes, so technical controls will fail. So, like I said, I've been doing this work for about 4 years. And this year, I've shifted my focus a little bit. And part of it was because I was feeling very overwhelmed by all of the alerts that we were getting. All of the new attack vectors, all of the new methods, all of the new APTs, all of that. And I thought to myself, if I'm overwhelmed and I enjoy learning about this stuff, I'm gonna guess my users don't wanna know about all this stuff. And what I would rather do when I have their very limited attention is to arm them, right? I wanna help them be in control of their security. So the first one, and we're gonna talk about this, go. If my computer doesn't freeze. It says click. There you go. It's phishing. I talk about phishing a lot. It's actually one of my gags that I talk about is if you've heard me speak in a professional capacity, you've heard me talk about phishing because we talk about it a lot. We focus on how do you spot and report. Hover over that link, check that sender, just a few basic things. I'm not asking people to look through headers or open up MX Toolbox online and go and look at what's the actual return address and all of that. Just a few basic things. And then also trusting your gut. We've said that for a few years. Trust your gut. If it feels weird, don't click on it. Don't respond to it. Ask someone else. Reach out to that person out of band, right? I'm going to talk about that in a little bit later. Multi-factor authentication. You would be surprised how many people still don't understand what that is or are still using text and phone when we have options to enter code or do a push notification. It's a lot of people. So why do we need MFA? Explain to people, yes, it kind of sucks, especially when you first start using it. How does it work and what do you need to know and how do you make it work seamlessly, right? It's a process to learn for people and understanding that when you go talk to them, hey, you need MFA. And by the way, we require it at work, but you can put it in all of these other places. You already had to download an app for work. Well, in that app, then you can go connect it to your social media, to your bank, to your email, to your shopping accounts, all of that, and trying to explain to them why that's important.
And actually, Galen, I think Change Health, they just came out with the fact that the attack at Change Health was due to an admin server that didn't have MFA on it. And
Yep.
the senatorial commentary around it is that it is irresponsible in this day and age to have access without MFA.
Excellent. Yeah, Patrick.
What's MFA?
MFA is multi-factor authentication. So it is using a second step when you log into something. So you have your password, which is very typical, right? But then it might send a code to your phone, or you might pull a push notification, pull up the app in your phone, enter that code that's there. Does that answer your question? Does that make sense? Biometrics.
Yes. So I absolutely think that there's only a handful of states that have done this, but they require entities that deal with the state to have MFA and other forms of security as a requirement in order to have contracts with the state. I think that should be a federal mandate because
I think it is. NIST requires, I think, multi-factor.
yeah, some of them do. We're not secure because we choose not to, because we choose convenience over security.
Correct.
So when your stuff gets stolen, it's your fault. Maybe not your fault.
Well, you missed the slide about not blaming our users, but yes.
But we may blame some IT admin.
We'll blame IT people if they don't have MFA on for sure.
I saw a person get scammed out of $75,000 once, because they didn't have MFA on their account.
Yep.
Scammer got cocky, sent an email, said, "Hey, I didn't receive the money. Send it again."
Yes.
They put MFA on their account that day.
Yep. Multi-factor, very important. Kind of inconvenient when you first start using it, but worth it. Get a password manager. I get questions about this all the time. They're like, but You told me not to write my passwords down or have them all in the same place. Agreed. I struggled with that concept at first too. I was like, why would I put all my passwords in one spot? Because it is more secure than just writing them down. It's super convenient. I love that fact. And it's just, I don't know. You can multi-factor your password manager. I did that, highly recommend it. But it's one of those things that, you know, I don't have to struggle to come up with a password anymore. I don't have to think of my nephew's birthday and my cat's middle name, because I didn't give her a middle name, and like my favorite vacation spot. It's not Disney World, but it is hers, so. Password managers, something you can do that help you so you don't have these passwords, you don't have to remember passwords, you don't have to reuse passwords, and it creates it for you, easy peasy, like just like that. And then automatic updates. You would also be surprised. People don't have these turned on. We have them because, you know, we manage our organizations, all of their machines, but it's just a really easy thing. People used to shy away from updates. I remember the days where you'd be like, update now, and it was just guaranteed to brick your machine for like 8 hours, where you're just like, I don't know what's happening, and then all of a sudden it works again, right? By and large, doesn't do that anymore, and if it does, you can blame me. But like, it'll do it overnight. Why wouldn't you do that? And a lot of times people think like, well, I'm not getting anything out of this. It doesn't have fancy new features. It's not like an iOS upgrade or anything, but those upgrades are for security by and large, right? And when you don't notice it, you don't think you need it, and that's where that communication piece comes in. We're trying to explain to people, no, like sometimes they release these patches, these updates that are really important, and you should just have those turned on so you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, and not to keep harping on the government, but this week the government indicated that if you're working on government contracts and you're not updating your Chrome browser right now, that you had until today, I think, to update Chrome if you're working on a government contract. And so the government is also starting to lean in on ensuring these types of things because they're important. And the number of 0 days coming out in Chromium these days is really high. And so if you're not auto-updating, you're pretty much logging in every morning and updating your browser at this point.
Yeah, and that really would be a pain in the butt, right? No one's gonna wanna do that. So why these 4? Why did I pick these 4 things that I think are the most important that I'm gonna talk to users about? Because it's what they can control, right? We tell our users about ransomware. We want them to be worried that if they click an errant link, they might accidentally shut down the hospital. We tell them that that's happened before and that hospitals have not recovered, we can't treat patients, etc. But what I want them to know is that their security, there are things they can do to make themselves more secure, and that they should, right? How can I make them feel empowered to be as secure as possible? Because I'm not gonna make them worry about someone trying to attack us from the outside and someone trying to breach our servers or something. I'm gonna make them worry about their own accounts, right? It's not worth it if I'm constantly worried about my Facebook profile getting hacked because Facebook itself got hacked or Twitter itself got hacked, right? I'm not calling it X. But it is worth it for me to worry about the passwords that I have on those accounts and that they're secured with multi-factor, right? So I'm trying to help them understand that they are in control, even though a lot of this is really scary. It's really easy to get overwhelmed, like I mentioned earlier. If I'm talking to them about Russia or China or the latest APT or the latest 0 day, they're gonna turn off immediately, right? They're not interested in learning it, and now they feel overwhelmed. So I'm gonna go easy. I'm gonna say, hey, here's a few things that you can do to be as secure as possible in your own space. We have a limited time to train them. Some of these people, they get my 10-minute annual security awareness training video, and some of them, maybe I also get an hour a year to talk to them, right? I don't have endless time. I don't get to connect with them on a one-on-one basis. Sometimes I'm given a Zoom presentation to 50 blank screens, right? So I don't know what they're hearing from me. I don't know how long they have. I don't know if they're paying attention. So what I'm gonna do is try to focus my time on things that they can take value out of. They don't need to know everything. Again, reiterate that. They don't need to know what I know. First of all, it's really scary what I know. And second of all, like, again, they have other things they need to know. I'd rather doctors know how to save people's lives than what TLS 1 point whatever we're on now is.
Yeah, and there are very few things that we leave under a user's control solely.
Yep.
They are a piece of the defense in depth stack that
Exactly.
is there as a last safety ditch effort in case literally everything else fails. Training them is a last ditch effort to try to add into that.
Correct. Give them action items, put them in control. I really like this chart. I took an adult learners course last year. So you have all of these different levels of incompetence and competence where you can do things, maybe like I'm an expert at security, right? So I don't have to think about it. I'm competent, unconscious competent at that, right? Whereas when you're starting on security on some of these things, they're unconscious and incompetent. They don't know what they don't know, right? And so what I'm trying to do is just to get them closer into this area where they understand what I don't want them to do and what I do want them to do. Maybe they're not an expert at it, but they know they should be using a password manager to create passwords. So I'm not trying to get them to mastery, right? And this helped me understand a lot of what my strategy should be when I'm talking to people, because I don't need them to be a master at everything security. I need them to be proficient at using password manager and having multi-factor, right? To phish or not to phish? All right, this is the discussion part. We got some time. So I'm firmly in the camp of to phish, right? And this is talking about simulated phishing, testing your users. Again, we're not tricking them, we're training them. Anyone have a strong opinion about phishing or not phishing?
I'm in the fish camp.
Okay, phish camp.
You've got to do it.
Got to do it, okay.
I think you need to be careful with the theming.
Need to be careful with theming.
Yeah, like I wouldn't want to fish, let's say something that like the company is trying to communicate, like let's say an HR review process or something like that. I'm not going to use the same verbiage or anything.
Yep.
Because I don't want to trick them. I want them to not actually interact with legitimate
Right.
corporate communication. So that's
Agreed. We very firmly believe in that, of not interrupting valid business processes. So we're not going to phish from HR or benefits or anything like that. Anyone else?
I would add to it. I would try smishing or vishing even.
Smishing or vishing, okay. You have unlimited time and a huge budget, don't you?
Yeah, oh, that's why.
Okay.
Or the top targets maybe.
Okay. So in the to phish, these are some arguments I've heard. Again, I'm in the camp of phish. These are some of the discussions that I've heard from around the industry. You get that in-time teachable moment. If your user clicks and they think they're going to something else and then they get your splash page of like, hey, you got phished, they're going to freak out. This was actually a lesson learned that we had in our phishing program where we changed that teachable moment. We got so many emails saying like, I clicked the link and it said it was a phish and I freaked out and I changed my password. What else do I need to do? And we were like, oh, sweetie, honey, if you get phished, the page is not going to say you got phished, but I appreciate your quick reactions. Help users learn to spot and report again. So we will do things, especially with newer entities, newer groups, where we make that hover link super obvious. It's going to say like youtube.com, and when you hover over it, it's going to say stop.seriously, do not click this.com. Right? And then we train people on that.
Actual early URL. Stop, don't click this.com.
We still had, I think, like 10% of users click on it. So they're going to click on it. And then you get metrics also. So this is something that security awareness professionals really struggle with is talking to executives about their program. How do I show my ROI, right? How do I show that my efforts are worthwhile in this program, especially when I'm full-time, this is all I do, right? What metrics can I have? This one's a really easy one, right? Because I can show you over the last 4 years that now we have less people clicking and more people reporting. That's a really easy metric to show and something really easy for executives to understand, right? Not to phish. It can make people mad. We have had people come screaming all the way up to our chief information officers saying, why did you do this to me? And we said, we do it to everybody, no offense. You're not special, but sure, we'll exclude you now because we don't want to deal with you again. People will still click even if they're trained. This one I've heard a lot, especially from executives. Why do we phish them? We know they're still going to fall for it. Maybe you stop one attack. Right? Maybe you stop one person from clicking on something. Maybe you increase the reports enough that our team can react before other people start clicking on it, right? Because it's not just about stopping clicking, it's also about increasing reporting. That's what we focus on. So if you're not gonna click, deleting is a perfectly fine option. I'd rather you delete. If your only options are delete or click, delete it. But if you have a third option, if you have the time to think about it, report it so that our security team can see what's coming into the organization, right? And then do you train people to spot all suspicious emails or just yours? Some days I think just ours. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I've had that thought before. Did people not click on this or interact with this because they know it's coming from us? Who's to say? But any change, in my opinion, is good change.
So in the time that we've been running our program, have you seen a change in the user activity in the wild? Like in?
Yes.
Okay.
One big metric that we have is time to report. So we can see how fast people are reporting suspicious emails once it gets into their inbox. In the wild, it used to be over 24 hours that people would receive an email and then report it. And we have that metric down to about 8 hours where they get an email and report it. So they're recognizing that things are suspicious faster and they report it faster because now we've had that button there for long enough that people know how to find it, know how to use it, and know how to contact us if something's not working correctly.
Great. Galen, are there other reasons to fish that are not user specific?
I like doing it, but you know,
What
it's
are
fun
the
for me.
global reasons to fish that are not user specific, that are institutional reasons to fish?
Oh yes, this was Shelley's argument earlier. It helps lower our cyber liability insurance. So if you work at a large organization, chances are you have cyber liability insurance. So if you get hit with ransomware, you got insurance to be like, okay, yeah, that's bad. Here's the money. But having these programs, proving that you are changing this behavior, showing these metrics, helps lower that insurance.
And it's a regulatory requirement.
Oh yeah, and regulatory.
Many of the regs out there now require you to do this type of activity.
Yes, so if you hold contracts with agencies, government agencies, they do require that you do this, again, to go with these NIST requirements where you have multi-factor. So again, we fish. I included this to show you that I'm very good at my job. Thank you. No, so these are the kinds of things we would show executives to prove that we have ROI, right? We are returning on their investment. So we're lowering our click rate. This is for all of Duke Health. We get to run this fish 2 times every year. It's about 40,000 people. It's a very busy week. I love it. But we're showing also that we're increasing reports. So that first fish we ever sent at Duke Health, 37,000 users, 37% of them clicked on it.
And it was ugly, y'all. It was
a bad
somebody
fish.
sent you a Valentine.
It had like 6 links in it. You
was
could click on
super
any of
ugly.
them. It was real bad.
A third of our population wanted
Yeah.
to be loved.
Love is a powerful motivator. But
Like the company and send them the phishing links when it's bonus time.
we don't get bonuses. We're a public organization. Actually, we're private, but
We
still.
looked at these data to see if there were differences in gender, in race, in years of experience. It mattered not in the least. Like across the board, they wanted that Valentine.
They wanted that Valentine.
This was one of the, Galen had just started this week. This was the first thing that she did.
It was,
like 2
this is
weeks
my second week of working.
First thing that she did, we got thousands of users respond to us that they thought something had happened. And this was the moment that our executives really understood what we were going to do in the future. That they sat in their room and were like, wait, how many people clicked on that? And when they saw the data and they saw that, it was the moment where our executives kind of turned a corner on this program. Because prior to that, a lot of our executives were like, this is gonna fail. It's gonna be a mess. It's gonna be too much noise. It's gonna be a lot of, unnecessary work. After that, they were like, good land. How much quicker can we get this going?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And then a statistic we're very proud of is this resiliency rate, which is the number of reports divided by the number of clicks. Ideally, you have more people reporting than clicking. And as you can see, since February of 2020, we have a lot more people reporting than we do clicking.
Why did your numbers drop in February of 2022 then?
Really interestingly, we started making the fish harder. So we thought, hey, y'all are getting really good at this. We've got over a 1 on our resiliency rate, and we're gonna stop making them softballs. So we're gonna make that hover link not say stop.seriously, do not click this.com. It's gonna look like what the hyperlink says, right? We made them a lot harder. And so we dropped in February of 2022, but now they've gotten way better at it. So how do we do it? Like I said, this is what I do full time. I have Shelley as my boss, and she gives me 20% of her time, roughly. She's an associate CISO now, so less than that, but she's fancy. We have a virtual security academy. It's a 7-month course thing that we run from August to March. We take December off. We have a different topic every year, and we have presenters come, whether they're from Duke or from external. This last year's theme was history of cyber attacks, and we had the very first presentation was this long history of where has technology come from and where have these attacks come from. We had a presentation, the next one was on Stuxnet and what a sophisticated attack that was for 2010. We had a presentation on AI, that kind of stuff. So we try to keep it topical. I try to keep people interested. We have our cybersecurity ambassadors channel. It's a team, and we share information. We let them suggest things. The most popular channel in that team is Suggest-A-Fish. So if I like to tell people, if you've ever had a really diabolical thought about how you would fish people, let us know. And then we'll use them sometimes. And then we shout people out when we use their fish. We have our phishing program. We have a big push in October for Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Hopefully everyone does a little bit something in Cybersecurity Awareness Month. We have our annual security awareness training. Everyone at Duke Health has to take this every year. You have to take it within 30 days of onboarding, and then it renews when you come up to your year at Duke. We have a video series. I was really proud of a series I made last year, which was our cybersecurity adventure series. I made a little meeple guy that looks just like our CISO. Didn't ask his permission, made 3 videos about him getting phishing texts and emails, and I still work there, so it worked out okay. And then I do presentations. So I do a lot of this, especially Cybersecurity Awareness Month, but always talking to different groups and users and trying to figure out what everybody wants to learn, what are their concerns. It gets us a chance to get in with people and say, did you see XYZ? Do I need to be worried about any of this stuff?
Yeah, and the only thing I'll add to that is our ambassador program really is kind of the grassroots model. We encourage our ambassadors to start doing light security awareness and other areas within their entities as well. And we start getting good feeds from our ambassadors now that they're recognizing issues within their departments that they want us to try to help them address. So a good example of that is they called us one day and said, hey, they're getting ready to do a news article on people's first jobs. Isn't that one of our challenge response verification questions? And we were like, yes, that is a CRV that we use. So posting your first job publicly, if you've used that, might not be the best idea. And it gave us a great chance to talk to our communications people and educate them around working with the security team on that.
Yeah. And that was all I had. So, any questions? Yeah.
A lot of blame on these programs goes down to the user, but I work for a Fortune 6 company, and we have massive amounts of internal spam that come from external domains, and it's legitimate. Do you get a chance to push up at management and say, stop using these third-party sites, because it teaches us that it's safe to click everything?
Yes, that is one of our constant struggles, where we have these other vendors that we use to send, the mass communication emails that we need to send to everybody at Duke. But then people are getting these emails that they don't have Duke domains, they don't have a Duke link, and it's like, but it's a real email. One of our constant struggles. We've talked to our communicators about it. We've told them, hey, don't send e-cards. They still do. You're not alone in that. QR codes. They use a lot of QR codes now. We're trying to explain to them why we probably shouldn't do that, or at least not do it to external links, where if you're hovering over it and it says a different link, we have QR code shortener tools. Can you make that a Duke link so that at least if people are hovering over it, they see it's a duke.is kind of a thing?
One of our awareness activities this year was to put a QR code on the back of our t-shirts that says, do you dare?
Do you dare?
And if you click it, it takes you to our security website where you get informed about the risks of QR codes in general. And so we try some of those kind of subtle ways of doing awareness. Yeah,
we have a sticker and a shirt that if you scan it and click the link, it takes you to our page on our security website about why you shouldn't scan QR codes. So we think we're pretty funny. But yeah, I don't have a total great answer for you on that, because that's just a constant struggle in big corporations, I think.
What are your thoughts on when your company uses for internal purposes like external SaaS applications, and the emails that are sent within those don't come from your company's domain. Have you?
Emma,
Yeah, we use those tools. At this point, there's nothing internal that we can create. So it comes down to, for us, user education. People reach out to the security inbox and say, hey, I got this weird email. And we're like, everybody got this email because it's coming from Duke. It's one of those user things that we just have to keep getting in front of, and then trying to talk to our communicators to say, like, is there a different way to do this? Is there a different tool that we can use? Can we customize these links when they come out so they're not pointing at a different tool that's not within our own company? But yeah, we do the best we can.
we do also, I think, so we have a lot of those,
Yeah.
right? We try to educate the business owners not to do it if possible. But then what we'll do is if we get a lot of reports back saying, hey, Compliance 360 is phishing me, we'll send those reports over to the compliance team and say, the email that you're sending out from your compliance vendor is getting picked up as phishing, which means it's not being effective for what you want it to have done there. Have you considered having your vendor use a Duke emailer tool or something to make this a more effective communication? I think that's the way to approach that from an awareness and training perspective, is to show them that they're devaluing their own message when
Yep.
they do it.
Our company used two different methods to kind of solve these problems. The first was implementing DMARC to cut down on the spam.
Mhm.
And the second was to put, they initially put external email at the top, and then about a year later, they made it even bigger and brighter.
Yes.
And then they whitelisted the external vendors that are associated with HR or compliance, for example, so that those would not be labeled external
Yes.
email.
Yes, the external banners are great if they let you do it.
I would disagree. I think the external banners are noise, and they work for about a month before people stop seeing them. And like, so this is one of those debatable topics. I had a agency recently call out a critical finding that we're not using an email banner, and I went, that's a critical finding to you, that we're not using an email banner? Like, we have a robust defense in-depth staff that's filtering that email, but you would prefer us to just tell people it's coming from external, which ignores your internal insider threat vector and trains people not to worry about insider emails. Our worst phishing events is when someone compromises a Duke email and uses it to launch their phishing event, because it then bypasses a lot of the controls that you put in place for external. So in my opinion, and it's only an opinion, email banners are a pretty ineffective approach, but that's just my opinion.
So like you see doing this, I saw you're getting better over time, and obviously you guys have a lot of access to employee files. Have you seen maybe a predictor or something, some kind of profiling way to look at anything about a person as they first come on board to say they are a higher or lower risk for this?
I don't get any access to employee files. All I get is to the data that we have. Somebody does for sure.
So VAP and
So the tool we have right now does have, say that right now we're switching to Microsoft.
I'm trying to say profiling people, but like,
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. So we do have a very attacked person list in our Proofpoint tool that'll show us who's getting a lot of risky emails. We haven't used it because it's not the most reliable, because that tool picks up anything with a Duke email address, whether it's legitimate or not. So we've tried to look at the users that's on the list, and some of them don't even exist in real life. So
like the likelihood of clicking like that.
so it does two things. I'm sorry. I'm going to interject one.
you never.
I know. It does two things. It'll let you identify very attacked users, which is ones where the email is saying this person's getting a disproportionate amount of attacks coming at them. It'll also let you identify overly clicky and vulnerable users who can't seem to stop themselves from touching the button. And it gives you both of those lists. The integrity of the data can be a little bit questionable, like Galen said, that as we've looked at it, there's a little bit of disbelief in some of the integrity of the data, but But you could use those kinds of tools, and then you could either think through the over-clickers for some additional training, or putting them in a watch list to just kind of keep an eye on their email. You could take the very attacked people and correlate it to see if they're executives, or if there's some reason why they're being, are they finance? Like, why are they being very attacked? You could also ignore that, and you could take all your finance people and all your executives, and you could put them into a group, and you could watch them that way. So there's all kinds of approaches. That's pretty sophisticated. Like, you're getting into the pretty sophisticated realm of awareness at that point.
Yeah, one thing we have done is when we've had some of these really major phishing attacks is to go look at who put their credentials into this fake login page, and then reach out to them and say, hey, you did this. I'm not blaming you, but do you want some extra training? So,
And we will put you on a watch list. If
yeah.
you give up your credentials, we will put you on a watch list.
I meant, that's kind of like a post-event thing. I was talking more of like there's only a matter of time before somebody upstairs comes down and says, hey, this AI thing is really catching on. Like, tell me who's gonna make a mistake, and here's some data. And I wonder if you'd seen any push on that yet, or.
I think we're in the process of implementing some deep AI insider threat analytics tools that might give us some of that information, but tying that to mail hasn't been discussed yet. And again, everybody's excited about the AI thing right now. That's a pretty deep threat analytics and maturity that you've got to get to. Like, what we're talking about here, I think, is a run program. That's a marathon program at that point.
Yeah.
Like, you got to get through all of this to get anywhere near the point in which you're using AI and that type of stuff to really have an impact, in my opinion.
Right, yeah, okay. You guys have such a large pool of people, and companies obviously for a lot of reasons are not gonna share this data with each other to build an even larger pool of things to look out for, in general, but.
Yeah, to my knowledge, we don't have any kind of predictor thing. We're not looking at, when we onboard 200 to 300 people every 2 weeks. So, yeah,
One thing
it would be very hard.
was interesting was kind of entity trends when we started doing entity looks.
Yep.
We're able to see that, like, for instance, our managed IT people, they tend to respond to culture triggers. If you send a leadership message, they're very, very likely to click on it. Whereas if you send like a threatening, your password's gonna go away message, they're less likely to click on it. And that's an entity-specific thing. The culture is like, whatever the leadership wants, like, be responsive. We've got other groups that are much more responsive to other types of triggers. And so when you get the data, you can start filtering it and begin to learn more about the entities and what will work in those entities, and then craft awareness to say, hey, you don't always have to be that responsive to. The LinkedIn fish was a great one. When our new CISO was coming on, right?
Yeah.
We did a LinkedIn fish to our entire organization and put his picture on it and sent out, and it said, hey, welcome Randy Arve. He wants to meet you all. Connect on LinkedIn. People who didn't even have LinkedIn accounts tried to connect with him, and people who were already connected with him also tried to connect to him over LinkedIn. So that was a pretty good indicator that culture for that group was a big driver.
I heard sales and marketing are also.
Super responsive. Yep. Yes.
Lead,
Yes.
sales, RFPs.
Yes. That's all the time I have. We got to get ready for the main session, but thank you so much.